episode 74 of the Bladeology podcast. Today we are going to jump into an interview with Mr. Pete Bruno of the New Jersey Steel Baron. This was a podcast long coming, and it is not unfilled with some technical difficulties, so please bear with us. The sound quality is obviously not up to our exacting standards, but this is an important episode to get out there, so I've done my best to clean it up a little bit, and I hope you guys enjoy it. There is some excellent knowledge to be gleaned from listening. Have a good one. Thanks so much.
So, one thing you guys skipped over. So before you guys, because when I first started, I guess 2010, even buying steel from you guys, it was still kind of an at the car process, but not really. But before that, to buy steel, like you said, you have to go through big companies, and the knife stuff was just a small division of the company.
A lot of the companies that did it, yeah.
They didn't have specialists that knew much about the knife steels. They just kind of sold it. You have to figure out your own research through forums. There wasn't like again, it wasn't just at the cart. It was a lot of email quotes, and even a lot of shops. They wouldn't deal with like, hey, like I need some CPM 154 CM. They're like, okay, like how many plates do you want? I'm like, I'd like a bar or two. Like,
yeah, and they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, it's like that was the big thing. Like, dude, you get this question a lot probably when you're like, we're a steel company. It's like, oh, like I sell aluminum. It's like, no, like we specialize. Like when I describe you guys, I'm like, no, you guys are a specialty steel company, specializes in steel cutlery steel from small stock to large stock, and again, you could just add to cart and purchase. That wasn't really available even back when I started. It was a
no, it wasn't.
It wasn't consistent.
No, they'd run out of stock a lot. Sometimes the alloys weren't as marked. Their traceability wasn't good. They didn't have experts that would help you. They didn't even. Some of these websites don't even have any information on what they're selling, and they don't even know. You know, they get salesmen. All they know is how to sell product. I don't want to bash any specific companies, but one of the franchise, metal retailers, we get calls from them every day. And it's actually gotten to the point where we almost want to write up a guide for them and be like, here, this is all the questions you guys regularly ask us that you can't answer for your own customers. I believe that education of your vendors, education of your customer base is really important, because if they have a better understanding of what they're selling and what they're working with right off the bat, it cuts down on the work for me at the end of the day. Like we'll troubleshoot heat treating for any alloy. Like we'll get phone calls for alloys we don't even sell, and we'll still get on the phone and do some research and help guys out because it's worth it, because at the end of the day, that guy's going to remember that Pete Bruno or Dale Kukos or Ed Braun took half an hour out of their day, sat down and was like, hey man, what's your process? What are you working with? What's it look like? Can you send me some photos? I might not know a lot about it, but I know a lot of guys who are smarter than I am, and that kind of shit matters. Half the success that we've experienced as a company is from, well, Nick knows, my dad sitting in this teeny tiny little office with like a cigarette that he was smoking, a cigarette smoldering in the ashtray, one behind his ear that was lit, a lot of cigarettes, a lot of smoke. But he would sit in there from like 3 or 4 in the afternoon until 10 o'clock at night a lot of nights, talking to new makers who were just having a shitty day, all sorts of guys. And I can probably go from one end of the country to the other and walk into any blacksmithing or knife making or crafting event and that my dad's been to and be like, hey, I'm Aldo Bruno's son, and they're all going to have a story about him. All of them. I have a lot of guys. I love the guys who are like, oh, I've known your dad for 20 years since he started the company. And I'm like, it's funny because it's been 13, but sure, But that's just kind of the impression that he gives to people. He's so very good at being everybody's buddy. He'll walk into a room and everyone's like, that guy's going to be a party, And that helped us a lot in the beginning. His willingness to sit there and take time and talk shop, or not even talk shop, just talk about life, really made a difference. Because remember, a lot of the guys in this industry, especially in the custom end of it, what are we talking about? We're talking about loaners, one-man shop, two-man shops, and they don't have anyone to talk to throughout the day. They don't have anyone to bounce ideas off of, and that sucks. I think we've probably all been there where you're sitting there and you're like, man, I really wish I could talk this out with somebody, and you don't have that person or that peer who you can count on to give you good advice.
Absolutely. I think that, I think that when it comes to our industry, knife making or knife selling in general, I run across that a lot. I get a lot of customers who call in and they just want to talk about knives as much as buy knives. They just want someone else to sort of discuss the habit or their hobby with somebody. So I can definitely echo that from a dealer's perspective. A lot of times it's just dudes who are like they want something, they don't know exactly what they want, and it's the time that you spend on the phone talking to them and being like, well, what do you need? What are you looking for? Like, what do you use this for? And then eventually just talking about just knives for like a half hour.
Oh yeah. Well, you said it when we were setting up. You know, we're telling a story here. There's a book that I listen to. I'm a big Audible guy. I like to read a lot too. I tend to listen to books. Well, for a while I would listen to books where I wanted to learn things, and I would take all of my like fantasy and sci-fi bullshit and I'd read that in hard copies. But now it's just anything goes because my time is chaotic as it is. But there is one book that I like to reread or re-listen to like once a year. It's Story Brand Marketing. You know, the reason they call you, the reason they call here is even if I have great product, great service, all of these things, that doesn't mean that I'm going to get the sale. It doesn't mean they're going to want to come to my business. Part of the reason they come to my business is because the story that we've written with them. You know, they call you because they want to talk about so-and-so's knife because they want to know the story of the product they're buying, because when they buy that $200-$300 knife, that $500-$600 knife, that $1,000 knife, they want that's a showpiece. You know, that's a whole tale for them to tell, even if they just bought it. Just the fact that now they are one more line in the story of that maker or that company, and they want to make sure that they're getting involved with the right story for them. You know.
No, absolutely. And especially, it's true for any price point, but especially above the mid range. That's 100% where it comes into, especially where it comes into the custom knives or the higher end stuff. People absolutely they want to have a tale behind every portion of that knife. They want to know where the knife's been, how you got it, now they're buying it, and they want a footnote in that story. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, when it comes to what you guys do, the supply, I know that. So you've in particular you've been scouring the earth for materials that are otherwise not available from other suppliers.
I wouldn't say not available all the time. So we do have a few things that we carry that nobody else does or no one else did. Remember, there's a good number of the cutlery specific distributors in the U.S. now source from us. We convert. You know, I talk a lot about conversion as far as when you talk about from a mill to us, from us to the mill. You said it too. Well, Nick said it. You know, he would call into certain shops and be like, "Hey, can you convert this sheet?" That's basically what he's asking, into smaller pieces for me, so it's more accessible to me. And they didn't want to do that. Well, that creates a void, and that's where we stepped in. You know.
Like half of Pete's Warehouse reference, as I've spent years there. I just visiting. It was in the beginning I didn't understand that as much, but back then was one saw. Now there's 3 and like 2 more in storage. Half your warehouse are just giant bandsaws, and all they do is just make sheets and make bars.
Okay,
Well, so that came about for. Well, go ahead, Jeremiah. I don't want to cut
okay,
you
so
off.
that's a good point of reference, which I was thinking of, which means the listeners are thinking of. Explain to me A to B. So when you say mill, you say sheet, you say bar stock. I know that most everybody knows exactly what you're talking about. But in this case, when you say a sheet of steel and a mill, explain to me a little bit how this works, like exactly what you do. Um, like where does the steel come from? Like Niagara. So Niagara is a huge steel supplier. How does that work?
Well, Niagara's a rolling mill.
Okay.
We source from them. So Niagara is a rolling mill. They actually get their billet stock, which is what steel is, the form that steel is in before it becomes sheet or plate, from Crucible. Crucible is the one the CPM steel, Crucible powder metals. Just one quick thing about Crucible too, because I do love their stuff. there's several companies that produce powder metals, right? I just want to point out that for Crucible, they are still on all of their alloys. They are pretty much on like their Gen 1 still. Like they produce an alloy, they fine tune it before they let it out, and they never produce another generation of it. There's several companies that are like, oh hey, this is the new version of this, we've done this. Crucible doesn't have to do that. They're so very good at what they do that their alloys are, for the expected usage, pretty much damn near perfect in my opinion. Now, knife making is none of those uses. Well, S35EM was designed for knife making, so it's really great for that. But most of what knife makers use is alloys designed for other jobs, except for ABL, that was designed, well, we'll get into that later. Anyway, so yeah, to put it in simplest terms, we buy big, we break it up, and we sell small. I'm sure that a lot of people can understand that. When I buy sheet, what I consider sheet, and there's varying definitions here, right? So sheet for us is either 16 by 48, anywhere from 1/16 up to 3/8 thick. We'll carry up to 1/2 inch in some regards, but we have 7 standard thicknesses that we usually carry. And then for the domestic stock, it's a 24 by 36 inch sheet. If you get up over 1/2 inch, they'll usually refer to it as plate at a lot of places, but everything we carry is technically sheet. When we first started sourcing from Bladeology, we actually would have the material came in 12-foot lengths, 12-foot sheet, and it was shipped to a company in South Jersey that specialized in not only making high-end shears, but they also offered shearing services on the other half of their business. So they would actually take our material, they would slit it down on their shears, and they had a process where they would kind of reform it on the edges, because the shearing will, depending on the rake that you set up, and I'm sure there's a bunch of like machinists who are going to hate me for describing this incorrectly, but basically, depending on your rake and a few other settings on the shear, you can deform the edges. So they also built a machine to kind of reform the edges, which we found after a couple of years, for the most part, worked out pretty well, but in some cases would actually create some micro cracking, and we'd end up replacing bar stock that would have that issue because they were over compressing the sides. Anyway, the other thing with them is, just like anybody else, they have, you have your MOQs, your minimum order quantities, right? So the minimum order quantity for them to produce, say, take a sheet of 16 inch by 48 and produce bars, like 1.5 inch bar stock, we would have to get several hundred, if not 1,000 bars made in each width. And that became kind of a non-starter because it's very, very hard to predict overall how much bar stock of any given width I'll need for any given amount of time. So we ended up turning around and saying, hey, we need to take this process in-house, the slitting, we call it slitting at NJSB. We slit to width and we shear to length. I will never shear things to width anymore, especially because we don't have the equipment to reform the edges and stuff like that, and because in a lot of cases it introduces a lot more stress to the steel than we want. So we use vertical bandsaws. So we actually, right now we've got 2 that are set up in the warehouse. One is like 16 feet tall, the other one is 10 feet tall. The larger one runs like, I think it's like a 2 1/4 inch wide bandsaw blade that's almost a 16 thick. That thing will take down 4 to 6 inches of material at a time, including alloy steels. Like we'll run CPM stocks and really high alloy steels on that, which is really impressive. Our other one is an old dual saw. I love that thing. We've been carting that table around in between buildings. We've rebuilt it, we've added parts, and it just keeps going. And that's where we run a lot of our smaller batch stuff on. And those run usually 12 to 16 hours a day.
And by rebuild, he means he pulled out all the hydraulics and put a cantilever with weights on to pull the table along.
Well, yeah, for the smaller one, it's a gravity feed, and then the larger one is still fully hydraulic run. Yeah, the gravity feed is it's easy. And also, so long as you take your time and you set up right, you can get really good tolerances if you know what you're doing. So, we don't have any need of like an automatic advance because we're always cutting different widths. Like we'll set up a stack and you'll have pieces that are 4 inches, 3 inches, 2 inches, 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches, and 1/2 inch, all getting cut out of the same stack, depending on how we fixture it, So it gave us a lot of flexibility. And it also meant that we needed more staff, because now we go from bringing in product that is ready for sale to now we're producing product that we need to sell, right? So it kind of changed the dynamic of how we did things, and that's kind of when I got involved more heavily with the business. When my dad first set up in the Seta warehouse, well, the industrial park that we're in now, I helped him set up for a few months, and then I was actually working for Stryker. I left there and came back, and he said, hey, I need some help, and I told him I would give him a year, and it has been, I don't know, like a decade or so. So,
That's
but
a
yes,
long year.
it's a long year, dude. It's a very long year, you know?
It's been more than a decade, Pete, because that'll be.
Shh, don't say it.
I will tell you
Just
about a decade.
let me. I turned 36 like 25 days ago, and I think I started at NJSB when I was like 22 or 23. So it's been a while, yeah.
So, all right. So these guys make the steel. You get the steel in. I mean, like a tractor trailer of sheets and or plates.
We get multiple. So we get container loads from Germany, and then sometimes up to half a box truck full, depending on where we're ordering from and what we're getting in. I've got like a 4,000 square foot warehouse that we just have stacked to the ceiling. That's off-site. That's just storage for steel. We even have 2 extra containers on site for storage for steel. Oh no, we have 4 buildings. My bad. I forgot it. So we have half of a building down the road, and then outdoor storage down there too. That we have to figure out what we want to do down there. But we got it. We're renting it for cheap, so it's helpful.
So you guys have built this business and do it so well that I think this is worth reiterating. You breezed by it earlier, but I'm gonna tap you back for it. So you guys actually supply steel to other websites that listeners might be buying from.
Oh yeah, a lot of them.
Like
yeah.
they buy that from you guys.
We've got I think we've got like 8 or 12, somewhere between 8 and 12 U.S. distributors. All of the Canadian shops buy from us. Corn in Australia, that's Gamaco is the main company. They're artisanal. I'm going to zone on the name. I'm sorry. They're the main game in Australia. We supply them too. Who else?
Can you say in the U.S. who you supply to, or is that top secret?
Yeah, no, it's not top secret. We work with Pop's Knife Supply. We work with Mike Turner. We work with.
Mike Turner is a U.S. knife maker.
No, Mike Turner is Texas Knife Supply. We do supply USA Knife Maker with a bunch of their stuff. I don't know. I don't know the list anymore off the top of my head because I don't deal with them as personally anymore.
Yeah.
We do. There's a bunch of Kane and Sons Blacksmith Supply. There is another blacksmith supply that's got a few retail shops in Colorado. I met the guy who runs them. I'm gonna zone. I should have written down names and stuff. I'm sorry, guys. I met him at Blade Show West this year. Really great guy. I'm very excited to go visit him. We work with bladesmith and blacksmith suppliers. I'm trying to think of who. Oh, here's a fun one. Is it McMaster-Carr? Yeah, McMaster-Carr we supply. So if you buy 1095 or 1084 from McMaster-Carr in small batch, that's coming from us actually. So that's a fun one for me because they're a big time company.
So just as far as steels go, is there, and I mean, okay, again, a reiteration. So I mean, there are specific steels that were designed to be used in the knife industry, but the bulk of this stuff is what do you know what the use for most of this is? Like 20 CV, like high. I remember high speed bearing steel was something
50 to 100.
Yeah, but like most of this has nothing to do with knives originally.
Nope. No, the ones that were actually designed for edge. Well, we'll start with things that were designed for edge holding, right? Not necessarily because when we think of knife, we're talking about cutlery, right? When I think of knife now, there's a lot of industrial knives, right? Sure. You got paper shredders, you got all sorts of shit like that, right? So anything edge holding. So AEBL, for instance, is a great place to start. It is a very high carbon bearing stainless that was designed to hold an edge because of that. So if you use a regular razor today at any point, or if anyone does, a large portion of the time, that's AEBL, just really, really thin AEBL that you can stamp, as opposed to we get it. The thinnest we grab it is like 070 thick, right? And now I carry that up to about 3/8, which is kind of cool. Another one that was designed specifically for cutlery was actually S35VN. Nick, you're gonna have to help me with the guy. He's that South African guy.
Chris
Runs
Reeve,
that. There we go. Yeah. So Chris Reeves was involved in that. S45VN, obviously, because it's like the big brother to that. And obviously Magna Cut was designed with cutlery in mind as well. And of course, our Nitro V is actually based on the ABL formula with added nitrogen and vanadium for grain refinement.
So Pete, I need something on record because I bring this up
I
all
know
the
this
time.
is gonna happen.
Yes, you know.
I told you. I don't even know what it is, but Jeremiah, I told you not to let him ask questions. Go ahead.
I need the official stamp that I named Nitro V.
Oh, you are gonna start an argument with me and several humans. I will give Nick 57% of the naming rights for Nitro V.
Good.
I remember there was the board, and I wrote it down, and everyone was like, "Nah, that's
And
stupid." And then 3 months later, the steel comes out with the stamp Nitro V. I was like,
You guys are dicks. Yeah, we were very drunk that day. I remember the drunk part. So.
Yeah, so we were drinking. I was like, we need to come up with a cool name for this because I was like, ABL has nitrogen and vanadium, Nitro V. Nah, that's stupid.
Nick brings that up in every episode.
Yeah, because people give me shit for using it, and I'm just like, I named it. I want to use it.
Yeah. I don't know why they give you shit for using it. It's a great price point and a great steel that you don't have to fight with, and I'm not throwing money away when I use it.
People, I think that there's a huge gap between customer knowledge, as we were speaking about before. I think there's a huge gap between customer knowledge, industry knowledge, and knife knowledge, and I think that people have a disconnect when it comes to certain things.
That shows people ask me all the time, like, oh, why do you use Nitro V? Why don't you use something like 20 CV, something better? I was like, look, I make custom knives. Realistically, a small portion of my collectors actually use my knives, even though it's a knife specific steel. Yeah, there's things that hold a better edge, but everything has its own purpose. Make custom knives. I offer a myriad of finishes. I choose my steel and my customs based on finish universability. Some steels don't polish well. Some steels don't take an acid wash well. Nitro V, ABL, they do everything.
That's a good point, because the guys, so we were having a meeting with FedEx today. We'll be in Q1, hopefully mid Q1 to late Q1. NJSB's website should be able to ship anywhere on the planet via FedEx, which I'm very, very excited about. At Blade Show this year, a lot of interest was expressed at wanting to get quality goods and services from us anywhere on the planet. So we're going to try and make that happen.
So Pete, when it comes to processing steels, dealing with heat treats, you mentioned earlier that you're on the phone a lot with makers, taking time and talking about recipes. And that's something that Nick and I talk about on the podcast a lot. We talk about with other makers, but recipes for steel. Can you tell us a little bit about the process, about developing the recipes and supplying the recipes to customers?
To immerse the building blocks.
For heat treating.
Yeah.
Well, one, I'm going to be honest, I am not personally great at heat treating. I'm not a metallurgist. If you're going to ask me what steels I'm most comfortable using in heat treating, it's actually ABL and 52100. Those are always going to be my go-tos. I get predictable results. You can't really screw them up, to be honest. Overall, your baseline is always going to be the manufacturer data that comes with them. Mills should always have time and temperature graphs and heat treating information, certifications, all sorts of technical data that comes along with their steels. We've tried to take it a step further, and we'll continue to do so. We actually have we redid all of our heat treating data sheets, not so much with new information, more visually. We got to start posting to the website next week, but just to help people understand what they're looking at. But basically, it's just I explain it to a lot of people like when you're making cookies. There's different recipes for cookies. There's different recipes for steels. The amount of carbon, the amount of chrome, the amount of this, the amount of that goes in there. There's a range that's acceptable for each known alloy, right? So you put together your batch, say we're dealing with like a 15,500 pound lot. So, and say we're making 1084, right? So that means we're shooting for 80 to 85 points, 86 points of carbon. So they're dumping the equivalent amount of carbon into a giant blast furnace, basically, if you want to visualize it. So they're not going to get that exact, right? So that's why you can have a range. So you go through your process, you do your smelt, they pour it out, they clean everything up. Usually like the front section is drag, the back section is drag if you're doing a traditional pour. And you end up with this big ingot. It's actually, yeah, kind of.
That's bad.
Yeah, so same thing with cookies. I'm doing a big batch of cookies. I pour in a whole bunch of chocolate chips. It's roughly, say I need 2 pounds of chocolate chips, and I throw it in. It's actually like 2.05. I need this much sugar, this much this much that. I dole everything out. I prep everything, and I get everything mixed up, and I have this big chunk, right? That big chunk is the billet. So we actually get a 1 billet shipped from Germany to Niagara to roll for us. We're going to do that with a few other tool steels too. So the billet that comes from there is 15 inches wide by I think it's 8 inches high by anywhere from 6 to 9 feet long. So these are very large chunks, right? Crucible actually has what's called a billet hammer. We visited their facility, and if you ever get the chance to, do it. It is awesome. It is right by the New York Fairgrounds. I think it's in Rochester, New York. And so you go into their smelting room, right? And you see where they do their smelts, and they actually have all these big walls built up where when they're done with the smelt, they take a giant, basically like a crane, they take this whole giant container and they smack it against the wall to shake off the container that they cast everything, that they poured everything into. Then, so it's all sandy and whatever. So then they take that and they bring it over to what's called it's a billet power hammer. Regular power hammers, 155 pounds, 50 pounds, 200 pounds. They're big, but not, huge. You don't realize it, but when you look at this thing, it's probably 8 feet tall on the floor that you're standing on. But then when you look down, it goes down 2 stories. And that's what they use to smack these chunks of steel into that 7 foot long by 15, whatever they're using to process in the next step. So that's a lot of fire and a lot of pouring things and a lot of melting and burn off and the way things mix and all that. You've got traditional smelts, which is what Germany does, and like your 440Cs and your 154CM, that's all traditional stuff. And then you have your powder metallurgies. So Crucible does it, Carpenter does it, Hitachi Metals has a version, the ZDP 189, and that's literally they are taking powder and mixing it. So automatically you have like a better matrix kind of going on. It's a better mix. So you're not taking time. A lot of heat treating is designed to get clumps of alloys to break up and evenly distribute throughout the matrix. Even though you think of steel as like a hard substance, you can hit it, you knock on it, it'll break shit. When you heat treat it, there are things moving around in there. Things reposition. My dad describes it as musical chairs. There's all sorts of ways you can think about it. But basically, when we heat treat, we're going from I'm going to mispronounce this probably because it's been a long day. We're going from an austenitic state to a martensitic state, I believe. So we're bringing the steel up to a temperature that will force the alloys present in it to evenly distribute throughout the matrix and lock into place. So we're going through a phase transformation. And then after that, you have to go through a tempering process where basically you're kind of tweaking that phase transformation. So the easiest example to explain is actually the Titanic. That's a case where the steel was at too high of a Rockwell, it got too hard in heat treating, and they didn't temper it back enough. Tempering is what gives you like your toughness. So your ability the ability of a knife to take and receive damage in a way, your ability to bend a knife. The ABS is a test for their journeyman and master smiths where they have to bend a knife at a 90-degree angle, and it's got to snap back to as straight as it can get. That's a result of the toughness and proper tempering and proper heat treatment. And other things too, like your corrosion resistance is a mix of proper heat treatment. You want to make sure that chrome gets evenly distributed, and how you finish. Edge holding, all of those things are affected by, one, your heat treat, but two, obviously the other processes you do along the way. So for us, it's been a lot of talking to other makers, because when you look at industrial heat treating process, it's designed for large batch industrial heat treating and for equipment that most guys don't own. Even like the nice ovens that you get from Paragon, which are ovens that I highly, highly personally suggest. We use them here and we love them. That you can't even consider that an industrial heat treating solution. Companies like Kowalski, companies like I'm going to zone on the other heat treating companies today. There's a few of them. We actually have a list that we suggest. They're set up to do batch heat treating. In knife making, especially custom knife making, one of the great things is that you can look at guys who know how to do this. I don't, but I know guys that do. They can look at this current batch of 1084, say, and look at the certifications, which is the actual numbers after they've done all the process. So like, say this batch of 1084 came up with 82 points of carbon, and the range is 80 to 85 or whatever it is. So cool, we have enough carbon, but this is a little on the lower side. That's okay though, because it still hits all of our important points. They know that they can make certain adjustments to get a little bit better of a phase transformation, a little bit better of a process out of that steel. Is it going to make a huge difference in the long run? Yes and no. How many guys do we really know who are running their blades that hard, who are really using them? Can people tell the difference between, an S45 VM blade and a Nitro V blade, say, in the long run? Because most guys are, if they're cutting a lot, they're getting to a working edge, not that pristine cutting edge, but that working edge very quickly. But yeah, you can get effect through heat treatment that'll make your product technically better. Other cool things about heat treating are, of course, the Hamones. So like W2, we now carry the Hitachi steels that are well known for that, the Mystic Japanese steels. It's cool stuff. And then we also carry now, it's 125 CR1, which is actually a Hitachi white equivalent that we source through Germany, which you should also be basically able to paint a mountain on in clay and get a cool phase, a cool effect. 1095 you can get Hamones on. Some guys do it with 1075. But that's also something it's an effect that you get through heat treating. The whole idea of that is the Japanese swords where they had the soft steel on the back and the hard steel on the front. You're basically forcing that kind of a reaction, but by using clay. It interrupts the rate of phase transformation, and then it creates a visible line of demarcation. So guys like Greg Sims, awesome example. That man, if you look at his page, the Hamones that guy is able to produce with RW2 are just, they're crazy. Like, he literally paints a mountain on the side of a knife, It's unbelievable. I could never do it, but God bless him for being able to do it. So heat treating is a big thing. Like I said, I don't know a ton about it. I just know enough to talk about it, and I am good at troubleshooting basic heat treating because we always have the guidebooks and stuff. Otherwise, Dale, he's my operations manager, and he does a lot of our custom knife work and heat treating. He's great at walking guys through and troubleshooting, and we also we work with Ed Braun, who now works with RMJ Tactical and does his own custom knives. He also helps us troubleshoot, and then other ABS guys and other makers. They're the one nice thing about our community is that everyone's willing to help out.
I think that's one of our great strengths as an industry, and certainly as a community. The freedom of knowledge to transfer from individual to individual is very important. So you mentioned a couple things. You obviously know absolutely nothing about heat treating. You can just talk about it very, very well, highly intelligent, and hit facts that most people have no clue on. So absolutely.
Yeah, but all the heat treating nerds are going to pick apart that whole section and be like, he has no idea what he's talking about. but that's okay.
That's all right. That's okay. Because you know what? It's I think it's hugely, as we talk about, it's hugely overlooked in the process. And I mean, would anyone know the difference between and steel? I don't think so.
Like,
It definitely is hugely overlooked. We're at the one thing I can say about heat treating is we are at the point in history where we have known alloys that can achieve known results. So that's a baseline. At the very minimum, we have a fantastic baseline with every alloy that we sell saying, hey, these are achievable results if you follow this process. If you want to go
the
off
Italian thing and tapping the table as you emphasize something goes through the mic.
my bad. We have known alloys, we have known heat treat methods, and we even have specialty designed oils, quenchant oils, designed for the steels that we sell. Like they've been made long before my company existed. Guys who are wildly smarter than I am sat there and figured out, if we mix these substances together and then quench a piece of steel at this temperature in it, this result is what you're going to get. We have that. So there is no excuse to have a subpar heat treat if you are attempting to sell a product. You can achieve knowable results relatively easily. I'm not saying easily as in like, oh man, this is like not a skill set that's important to learn. I'm saying easily like there are step-by-step instructions. It might not come out right the first time. You just need to get your skills better, but there is the information available out there to do it the right way right away. I'm not against guys like, using found steel or unknown steels, the bumpers and this and that. If they want to do stuff, great for them. Yeah, I'm not against it. I get it. If you're able to get a batch of stuff and you can figure out a heat treat that gets you results that you're happy with, and you can test for those results, more power to you every day. Not against it. But
even heat treat too, it's how the steel is processed. Like you said, shearing it causes effects. I machine my steels, and I always think about the story. Aldo told me, I believe it was Aldo, not you, but you definitely heard the story. I forgot what maker it was that would forge D2 so heavily and compact it so heavily that it becomes a powder metal essentially.
Yeah, he actually would get more parts per million than CPM D2 did almost. It was oh man, I'm gonna zone on his name. I almost want to. I don't think he'll pick up right now. Maybe we should do this again with him. That'd be fun. Oh boy. Yeah, it's there's a lot that you can do. There's a lot of knowledge out there.
So knife making now is like you said, it's not easier as a skill set, but it's easier to acquire materials and learn the knowledge than it ever has been, which is another sort of theme in these episodes, which is people there's lots of information out there. Like in the times before it was harder, but now like you guys, for instance, have a website. You can buy the steel, you can find the recipes, you can go to another website, you can buy the handle material, you can buy grinders. I mean, this industry has expanded exponentially in the last decade or so to allow multiple craftsmen all over the world to get into this hobby to start with and then industry to finish with.
And that's what I'm saying is like if you're serious about doing this as a side hustle or even just serious about producing quality product, whether or not you're selling it or this or that, there is a definitive baseline that you can achieve without having to really kill yourself. You can get a few pieces of 1084 from me or from Pops or from any of the other vendors that we work with. It's a simple heat treat. You can do it in a forge. There's directions to build a forge. There's clubs, there's groups, there's all sorts of things going on. And that's what I'm saying is like, since the information is out there and available, we're not like taking away the mystery of steel and this and that, but you can't sit there and use that as an excuse for producing a subpar product. We put a lot of stock into like, oh, it's American made. Okay, cool. That's awesome that it's American. I appreciate that. I want to know that when I buy an American made product, it is the best damn thing you can put out. And if you're not at least at base level to the rest of the industry, because that information exists, you're doing yourself and every other craftsman around you a disservice.
Okay. All right. Put it out there without putting it out there. Okay. All right. No,
It's man, like my dad and I have a running joke. He used to go to like the same fair every year and buy these little Chinese knives for years. Like when I was in Boy Scouts, I was like, 9, 10 years old, 11, 12. And he would always say, he's like, every year I buy the same little folding blade from this event. And they get better and better and better and better and better every year, So I want to know that if you say, hey, I am proud of my American-made product, and Nick says it, and my guys on the floor say it, that we all have the same idea of what an American-made product should be. It doesn't have to be the best. It doesn't have to be, a high-end whatever. It doesn't have to be that. But there are certain boxes that need to be checked off to say, hey man, this branding makes a difference. Otherwise it's a hollow thing, and I don't want it to be a hollow thing. I want it to mean something.
I agree, and I am actually going to say that it should be the best. I handle knives all day, just like the rest of us. Actually, I probably handle more knives than you guys. Like, it should be the best. When I talk to people about making knives, when I talk to companies about making knives, and I think about American made, I'm on the same page. That shit should not be subpar. Like, if it says American made, custom knife making is one of the most American things out there. It should be the goddamn best. Like, it should be the thing that all others are judged by in my book. When I hold a knife and it says made in America, I'm like, okay, well, it should be the greatest.
I agree overall, but what I'm saying is the competition definitely breeds better results.
Sure.
So there's guys over in Europe, there's guys in Australia who are making wicked shit. Holy crap. Some of the guys down there, holy crap. They make really cool shit down there. Mexico, there was a maker from, I think it was like Brazil or Argentina, I met at Blade this year, who had gorgeous stuff. I want to see that, because the more hands in the pot that are making quality product, the more you have to be, it forces you to be at the top of your game, and especially the other nice thing about knife making is there's so many little sub groups within knife making. You've got the folder guys who do it this way, you've got the CNC guys, you got all these different little groups that have their little markets and whatever, and some of them have stagnated, and we've seen it especially in the pandemic, because there were so many people trying their hand at it, that you got kind of like, I don't want to say lazy, because it's always hard work, but everything was kind of like the same, because everyone was just it's like we saw a million new baby makers all make kind of the same knives for a bit, which is cool. I love it. It's just funny how consistent that is overall. But when you get other countries involved, and you look at the work from over there, their aesthetic is entirely different than ours, I want to see more of that personally, because that's when you get into the custom knife world. For me, once the skill set gets to a certain point, now we're just combating for looks, like what blade looks cooler, what blade speaks to me more. And what was it? Oh, well, Nick, when we came to visit you guys, and then we took that very long drive to my other buddy's place, and they were doing the sword class there.
Yeah, Zach Jonas.
Oh man, dude, and just the swords. They call him the god of swords or whatever. I can't remember his name right now. Vicky and
I saw him recently. I forgot to.
Yeah. Anyway, he made, was it a dozen swords? They were all based on Greek gods, and he's so good at sword making that he has one of the first swords in like the Smithsonian, modern day era swords that are in the Smithsonian. Like, that doesn't happen. And he has techniques, and you look at what he makes, and it's jaw dropping. It's a whole other level. And for the most part, he's very open about his techniques. But the last sword in that album, the hilt, the way that he made it, is him and his dad's like trade secret, and that's fine with me, because it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. It's unbelievable. But that's what I'm saying, is like, once you get up to that level, what's going to be the difference maker? It's aesthetics, it's branding, it's the story. Again, we get back to that, but there has to be that base level, you know.
Sure.
Or you've got guys, you know, you've got your production shops or your mid-sized guys, you know. My bread and butter is, especially for water jetting, is the 100 to, well, the 50 up to like 500 unit batch, because that's what most shops that are full-time and established and have at least a few guys working, they can buy in those batch sizes and turn that product in a reasonable amount of time. Then you have the bigger shops where we're cutting thousands of parts for them. That's a different ballgame entirely. But, you know, that level of work too, even within those ranges, you know, all the tactical guys, the EDC guys, all of this, there's a lot of them to a point, but the ones who are succeeding, they're telling good stories, they're making product that they can at least speak to its uses, or has a good story behind it, and they deliver a really, at the end of the day, a really good package overall. I mean, you guys do that too. We did the holiday knives for the staff last year from you guys, and you guys send the stickers and the nice boxes and all that kind of shit. And that's a big part of it, you know. That's that. What is that? That Apple mentality, you know, when you get the really nice box. And not that I've ever owned an iPhone, and I never will, but it's that idea, you know. It's the whole presentation of the thing.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with you. All the marketing that I do is trying to be different, more original, and interesting, and tell a story. I totally, that's absolutely the thread that binds a lot of this is an excellent story, going through all of the ages, or as many as we can. Um, I did want to, so before you had mentioned um, custom knives, right? There's another part of the Steel Baron there, which is the knife shop.
Oh yeah.
Do you want
Yeah.
to talk about that?
So, I just call it the workshop now because we do a lot of things down there.
Okay.
We're making Damascus, we're making Sanmai, we dye and stabilize wood down there. We're going to start running classes for more local stuff. But we have a brand that we're slowly building. For local cutlery mostly. We live in North Jersey, so foodies are a big thing. So it's a lot of like chef's knives and barbecue knives and fillets and stuff like that. We got a couple shops that carry our stuff. That'll be more of a focus moving into next year. We've spent a lot of time this year focusing on New Jersey Steel Baron and the services we offer here. But yeah, dude, mostly it's Dale, you know. It was my dad for a bit, and then he's kind of retired now, you know. He shows up twice a month. And so that's one of Dale's things is he does the custom knife work. It's mostly locals. We've actually got a sharpening service that we're opening as well. Some of the old ladies in town found out that we sharpen knives, and they're very happy about it, since they can just drop off their knives and pick them up in a day or two. And like, it's nice to like, I guess they like the fact they can walk in and say hi to us and the dogs and everything. If anyone ever visits, we have anywhere from like 3 to 10 dogs in the offices at any given moment.
Many animals.
It's a lot of dogs. Yeah, it's a lot of dogs. It's fine though. It's a good thing. Lost my train of thought.
There's
there,
a lot happening in that workshop.
Yeah. So one of the things. It's important
in that workshop.
NCC Knives. Well, Nick rented space there for a while. He put his first CNC machine in the corner of that shop, and got to work with good old Aldo Bruno while he was still making knives. He's doing wood turning at home now, making bowls. And like I said, we're actually on it's going to be like the 5th iteration of that shop space, and hopefully it's the last one. We're just kind of like rearranging, because like I said, we're producing Damascus and Sanmai. That's value-added product for ourselves and our customers. We'll also be running the classes. Again, we're trying to focus on creating people who want to get into the trades and future craftsmen, so it's kind of like developing our own customer base in a way. And then also we do some small batch OEM work. We've got a couple projects. We do trainers and live blades for a martial arts group, and then I do a couple of other projects that are like they're more like forging and like high-end specialty product oriented, like very, very small batch, and those are fun too. Just stuff to pay the bills and unique stuff that we are set up to do that other shops aren't, just because of the different skill sets that we've acquired over the years. And then we do the custom knives as well. And yeah, we also, so if you work for us, you get keys to the shop after a certain amount of time. You're tenured, and then that means you get access to that shop as well. So we actually invite our staff to use the facilities for their own projects, to learn stuff. They can ask Dale or I or other guys who are knowledgeable in different skill sets to come out and teach them. A lot of time, the evening guys, after they get off at 8 or 9 or 10, they'll actually go over there and forge a bit. Yeah, we keep the shop, the facilities open and accessible to everyone. We actually have a game room upstairs. We got pool. So we'll get together for UFC fight nights. We'll do D&D campaigns. We'll play darts. We started doing that during the pandemic just because our town was gracious enough to allow us to stay open. We have a really, really good working relationship with the police here. Hawthorne Police Department is phenomenal. Love their events. They're actually going to be a bunch of our first students when we start running classes. But so we were trying to avoid the guys going to all the local bars, because we're at 22 people now, but if one or two guys get sick and it runs through the building, it's shitty to overcome that. You can't magically make up machine hours. So we set up this space upstairs next to my office for the guys to hang out. It's been great. When we do company events, we now kind of like, we'll clear out the warehouse. We do a big Halloween party. We do a big holiday party at the end of the year. And we can use both levels and just enjoy the full facility, and people can hang out and just have a good time, and we can enjoy what we've done,
That's pretty legit work environment you got there. That's keeping
We're trying. It's been fun. We've had some guys who really have jumped on the access to the shops, and other guys who, they clock out and they go home, and that's cool too. It's important to me, it's important to Dale, it's important to my dad that we make this stuff accessible, because it's one thing to help everyone else, like our customers do it, but we might as well help ourselves do it too. We got another laser engraver to set up that everyone's really excited about, because it's the CO2 laser, so we can start doing the game boards and wooden sayas and all sorts of other stuff on there. It's excited about that one. We've got the fiber laser that we've got. We do it for internal stuff, but we were going to set it up as a customer accessible service as well. We figure some makers might appreciate having their stuff engraved by people who also make knives, because I have heard some horror stories from some other laser shops in the past. So things like that. But yeah, it's important. And the other thing is too, I hate to say it this way, but anyone who comes in and starts using the machines on their own, they're automatically building their skill set, and they're becoming more valuable to the company. If so-and-so, starts, grinding knives, and we supply them, we give them steel to use. We give them, when they're practicing, they have to use the used belts and stuff like that, or they can buy and bring their own belts. We've got a few rules in place, obviously. It's not just ad hoc, whatever you want. But after a time, it's like, hey, so your physical skills have gotten better, so now I can bring you in when I do these small batch OEM projects, or if we do have some custom knives to make, you can be trusted to do hand sanding or handle assembly or this or that, and it kind of it helps us utilize you more as a staffer faster when guys come in and do that kind of stuff. And if they find they have a knack for it and they build a customer base, we even have a process for them to use the shop space, pay out the shop, and they still take their profit. Obviously disposables and rent needs to get covered, so we have a deal there as well. Not that anyone's gotten to that point, but they will. I have faith in these guys.
I mean, I think it's forward thinking and absolutely great to have that all in place. I mean, exactly like you said, and it is how it is. I mean, when an employee jumps in there and becomes interested in their surroundings, and then they take the next step and the next step and the next step and the next step. I mean, it's a life development thing as much as it is anything else. I mean, it's good for them. It's good for the company. The more intelligent the individual, the more valuable they are. It's a crucial thing, and you never know. It could change somebody's life. Maybe they become a famous knife maker.
Yeah, it's also great team building. As Pete, as I've been there with you guys for the early days. I watched you guys go from essentially a team of 6 or 7 to a team of 22 plus. So that whole process in between.
So tell me a little bit about. So you're talking about the fiber laser. You're doing some lasering. So you actually offer a bunch of services other than just the steel, right?
Yeah, so right now the available services are, well, it's really, if you think of it this way, so we do the conversion services for bar stock, so the slitting and the cut to length, that's technically a service. We do wide belt grinding, which is a non-precision surface treatment, basically. So we're just basically very quickly, not to a specific thickness, running up to 8-inch wide bar stock through a wide belt grinder just to, in the case of the domestic hot roll, clean up the can or the decarb, if you want to call it that. And in the case of the Bladeology stuff, they have very little decarb, super clean material, but it's still nice to pass it through because who wants to waste time in belts doing that themselves? We now have a precision grinding service, which actually this week we are finally about to get through our backlog of projects, and provided next week we can sort out, we're having a little bit of trouble somewhere in the piping of the website. We're trying to figure out what Connor is. I'm just here to listen to him be like, where is this? He didn't build the website, he took it over. So sometimes he runs up against other code that he's not happy about, and I don't blame him. But we're going to be adding all of our precision ground bar stock options to the website. We did a test run and it didn't take. And so he's away this week. He's setting for climbing. So Connor is a route setter as well. He does climbing. So him, my girlfriend Vicky, who's also our office administrator, and then our warehouse foreman Luger, they're all climbers now because of Connor. So he actually works Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 10 hours a day, and then he works remote on the weekends because the rest of the week he is setting climbs all over New Jersey. So I think I lost. Oh, you guys are still there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. It just the background noise from you guys cut out suddenly. Yeah.
So like rock
That's
like climbing.
Yeah. Climbing. Yeah. Like right now he's setting for a competition that's happening, I think, in South Jersey or something like that. So it's like it's a couple days of setting, and then I think it's like 2 days of competition. So he'll be back next week, and we'll be tackling new shipping options, and then we'll be trying to put up all the precision ground options. And we also now offer precision grinding, for water jet parts, which is great. Especially when it comes to the domestic stock, you're talking about everything domestically that we source is like 15 to 20% over finish thickness in its hot rolled state, and usually it comes in a range. So a lot of guys get confused by this too. We have little charts on the website, and we're going to try and figure out better ways of sharing this info. We have line cards, we have all sorts of stuff, but on the website specifically kind of like throwing it in your face, but in a nice way. But so for instance, if you want to buy an 1/8-inch piece of, say, CPM 3V, you have to order a piece that is 140 to 156 thick. So then when you surface it, it should clean up. There should be no hot rolled decarb. There should be no inclusions by the time you hit 0.125 thick. So we purchased a grinder that will now allow us to do that within, at best, 5-10 thousandths, which is half a thou. The bar stock on the website will all be within about a thou, as listed.
Is that the new grinding machine that Nick's been down there working on?
Oh, yeah. We actually had a local guy. I'm going to visit his shop. He's in Patterson. He does some type of like large scale one-off like plastic part manufacturing. I'm not sure, but he runs a 60-inch diameter old school Blanchard grinder. I met him through our machinery repair guy. He came through and gave us basically nothing that we didn't know, but he gave us an important trick to make sure that our crosshatch was working correctly, and that allowed us to dial everything in correctly. And since then, we're easily holding a thou, and then when we need to, we're holding half a thou. Grinding in water jet, and then by this sometime in the next 2 months, we'll be doing a simple CNC handle service. So basically, since we have your files, we'll be able to facilitate cutting out. It's going to be basically just profiles and pinholes, so guys can take kind of ready to carve or ready to grind, ready to shape handles and attach them to their knives. And eventually we'll step that out into not full 3D milling, but like simple things like, hey, we'll chamfer it, all the corners, or we'll corner around them and leave it like that, just so you have a good and simple base to use. And that'll be good for guys who are doing batches from like 10 up to 50 or 100. And then after that, we actually have a couple shops where we could shop people out to for more fully 3D carved handles, and they'll do sheaths too. But the setup fee there is, I think, for the one shop, I think it's like $400 or $500. So you really want to be sure that this is the knife that you're going to run several hundred of per year before committing to that. So up until that point, we want to have like a quick, cheap, cost effective, I don't like the term cheap, but cost effective, down and dirty method to get guys handles that they can just stack up and put on their what I like to call their introductory level blades, or their semi-production, or however they word them. But it still gives you flexibility in how you want to finish that out.
Wow. Okay, so start to finish, that's quite a bit. I mean, so guys can just get the steel from you, they can get it water jet, they could get, I mean, that's, and surface ground.
Water jet, surface ground, we'd ship it with handles. I'm talking to a couple shops about producing pin, Corby bolts, pins, pivots, stuff like that. We have a few offers on the table from either guys who are already in the industry and producing it. Nick, thank you for that, by the way. One of your guys' buddies. And then, yeah. I actually got to visit his shop soon too. He's nearby. I'm super excited about that. Like, so excited. He's going to come and hang out for a couple UFC nights. I didn't realize he was into fights, so he had a blast when he was here. Anyway, and a few other shops. We're also so one of the things next year too that I want to focus on is, as much as I want to expand our services and our billable hours, it's important for me and the company to do that, because when it comes to alloy supply, I don't want to be reliant on my inventory to make sure I'm paying my bills. I want to be reliant on our skill set and our ability to manufacture, right? Because I can take any alloy and cut it on the water jet, but if I don't have the alloy, I can't do anything to it, right? So, we also have the laser engraving that we're doing. We're starting to do our sheet stock sandmai again. What else? Actual powdered steels we have on hand. The laser engraving, CNC router. Yeah, I mean, that kind of covers the gamut right now. I feel like that's plenty. And what I was saying was, so next year I want to start hitting the hobbyist market a little bit harder too. So we've actually gotten a lot of requests for, NJSB knife blanks, just generic blanks you can buy from us. So we'll be doing a few versions of that. We'll be doing just a straight off the water jet. You got to do everything yourself. We'll do ones that are heat treated, but nothing else has been done. We'll do partially ground ones. And for each of these, we want to either ship we do wood stabilization stuff in house too. So we can ship handles that are cut for that or not, or whatever. So we'll have little knife kits on the website. It lets us, use and practice with our equipment and produce, product and get a better understanding of things, and, make our process route more accessible. And, it's actually good when you think about it, for when it comes to customers. You'll be able to, if you're a knife maker and your customers are like, well, if you water jet cut, why is it still this expensive? You can actually just send them over to our website at that point and be like, hey, their standard EDC is basically the same size as the knife that you're buying from me. See how much it costs for me to purchase it from them. I'm starting at that price point, so I can't possibly afford to be cheaper than that. We've actually, on that end of things, I forgot, Connor has built a couple of we own the domain for nitrov.com, adcrv2.com, and a few others. So we'll actually be producing informational websites that makers and distributors like you guys will be able to use to refer to. It'll have data sheets, it'll have user comments, it'll have photos of finished knives. We're going to try and get some videos together of the knives knives made out of those alloys in use. So then you kind of have somewhere to go, be like, hey, this is the manufacturer sponsored website where you can learn about this alloy.
I think that'd be phenomenal. I think that's a great idea. Honestly, it would be really great to be able to point towards something like that and be like, here is the information from the horse's mouth. Like, you read it.
Oh, they're pretty much done. I actually just have to review them and give the final okay. And I think we just want to try and find a little bit more content to put on them as far as like video and photos and stuff like that. So, but we're just about there. And then yeah, it'll be great. And there'll be, if you're a maker and you go to our website and you go to like the Nitro V product section, it'll be in the description like, hey, you can check out all of this information and more on Nitro V, or send your customers to this website. I think that'll be really good, and I think it's worth hosting those sites. So,
I mean, as an adjunct to that, a lot of lately, I know we've had this conversation, but in the last two shows I've been to lately, I have this sort of diatribe I go on about the knife industry and like synergy, global awareness, and like trying to come together more, and that kind of hits. Part of that is because as dealers, we all sort of try to hobble this information together in different ways to try to inform the customers better. And I'm pretty sure we all do it kind of with the same information, but at a point, it would be great to just have a website where it's like, look, this is the manufacturer is talking about the steel, just like a dedicated information base. So that way, in a lot of ways, we don't have to repeat all the same information and maybe get it slightly wrong or from a perspective, but we can all sort of work together and be like, okay, like this is from the source, this is where it is. That's really crucial.
Well, it might be worth it too then to kind of step it out. We're doing it with specifically alloys that we source. ADCRV2 was an alloy that we introduced to the market that has been really successful on a lot of different levels, across from the forging guys to the tactical guys, the EDC guys, even the kitchen guys. It's just a great all-around steel. It's 1080 plus, effectively. That's another. The fun thing with steel is every alloy has like 11 different names just in the U.S. and then internationally. It's super fun. But that's one that we would do, that we own already. But when it comes to, I'd like to maybe we step that out a little further. We could talk to maybe Tim and the guys over at Crucible about making like a S45VN website, and putting that together. That would go a little past my proposed budget for such things, so I would have to be like, hey guys, would you want to like get involved in this and see the value in it? But it's a conversation we could have, and also ask permission to, like, because we'd have to go and see if we could even purchase that domain name, and see how that goes. So
it sounds like there's a lot in the future that you're looking to build. You're talking about also getting, and we've had this conversation as well, getting into sort of the craft market locally in New England, which I think is crucial. I think that's a great idea, or having teaching abilities at the shop.
Yeah, well, the unique thing for us too is like we know so many makers. So when we said, hey, we want to run classes, we've had a lot of really, really quality guys step up and say, hey, I'd love to teach a class at your place when you get going. And it's just wonderful to have that kind of access to these guys, because then we can even turn it into more fun things. We could bring them down for a couple of days and turn it into, hey, we're going to make some knives together, like a collab for fun, and then do the class, There's a ton of guys that I would love to just have in the shop for a couple of days and put together anything, That's doing something like that is a little more down the road, because obviously, unfortunately, because the day and age that we live in, we want to, probably set up a YouTube channel and record that and kind of not monetize it, but have it out there so, everyone else can have that experience with us, and we're not quite there yet.
Make all the content. Everything is content. Content is content.
Yeah, it's so much to make all the content. Like, I even have, there's someone on staff and part of her job is to make content, and we're just so busy. we're figuring out new ways to schedule things, and like I'm actually working on a whole new ticketing system for the whole company so we can better track everything that we do. There's just so many different little things and so many steps. Like even the water jet stuff, dude. Like, it is, for something so simple, at the end of the day, it's a blanking procedure, right? It's just an advanced bandsaw, right? And that can take a while. Guys will send us everything from napkin drawings to even, I love getting, I'm probably gonna get flack for this too. I really enjoy getting technical drawings and DXF files from and I'm air quoting right now, engineers, and it's just a mess of like spline lines and layers and BS, and you're like, can I just get a clean 2D file to nest out for you if you want this turned quickly, you know? But we offer that service too. We do conversion services, so you can send us templates, drawings, whatever, and we'll create a DXF file for you, just a 2D DXF, and we'll keep that on file with us forever. I have our IT company has backups on backups on backups. Sometimes I have to go digging with them if it's really old and it's not accessible anymore. And we'll send you copies whenever you want, because you know things happen. Say we lose power for 3 or 4 weeks and you need to get parts cut. I gotta send you your files, you know, and we'll, you know, anytime on demand when we finish the job, whatever. And then, you know, if we draw up your files, you know that they're solid. We have a whole proofing process. We go back and forth. You agree multiple times. We make sure that you're happy with and have expected results. And then we go ahead and cut your job. And the other things there are too is you don't have to, well, if we do a conversion, you have to pay us for the CAD, you pay for a CAD fee to take a drawing or a template to a DXF file. But if you submit a file or you have files on hand or the file's done, the quoting doesn't cost anything. We don't charge for that. And then, what was I going to say? Quoting, I lost my spot. I'm sorry.
The quoting for the CAD files?
Yeah, the actual quotes we don't charge for quotes. We just charge for generating usable CAD files. And then you don't, after the quoting and all of that, once we say, hey, this is the job that you want to run, these are the alloys we're running, we're all agreed, everything's good to go, and we schedule you, you don't have to pay a dime until we box that shit up and contact you with your final invoice, with shipping, right? So there's no, from my perspective, you know, it's either I go on our website, I buy steel, and I ship it to another service. And don't get me wrong, there are other great water jetters and other services out there. Use them, please, for the love of God. Everybody's trying to make a buck. But I always suggest having a couple of ways to get it done. You know, have a backup shop somewhere that you can trust or someone that you know. But it's tough to find like industry specific work, especially for cutlery. So anyway, up until the point, it's cash.
None of the business runs on time. So anytime you have a backup to a backup is the best. That's it.
So, you know, we do cash on delivery, we do payment terms with some companies, we do payment plans, we're super flexible. You know, things like guys will call and they're like, hey, I need a rush job, or I'm in a pinch, can you do this for me? And I have the ability to have one of the guys come in on the weekend and take a day off during the week and run, you know, a couple of water jets for a total of 16 or 20 or 30 machining hours in one day, and crank out work for guys if need be. You know, I want to be able to be there for guys in that fashion, and for you know, job shops and companies, you know, because if we can help them out of a jam and they get back to being profitable, what's going to happen? They're just going to come and spend more money with me, right?
That's
so
technically how it works.
Technically, you would hope. That's one of the things in our favor is like you don't have to pay until we actually ship. You don't even have to. You spend less money on steel by going with us, because every time you buy a bar of steel off of our website, part of that per pound fee also includes a processing fee to cut down the bar stock. So when we quote in-house, we quote based on a full sheet. So that's the purest per pound price before discounts you can get, right? So instead of say I bought a half a sheet, so say there's an extra like $6 in cutting fees with that, that's not happening, you know? You're just getting the pure rate. We're cutting it and we have to trim it down. That doesn't matter. You're not getting charged for that part.
I tell guys all the time, is like, when I send guys your way, the benefit is, even if you use water gem services, but if you use someone else's, you're going to buy a sheet from Pete, you're going to pay a ridiculous shipping charge because it's an oversized, heavy item, then ship to someone else for them to water jet, and then ship to you again, a not oversized but heavy item, lead time, transit time, chance of being lost. They just done in one place and they just ship you one smaller heavy box.
And burden of delivery falls on us, right? So if I tell you I'm going to deliver 12, you know, Ranger blanks to you, whatever you want to call it, right? And our water jet fucks up and it miscuts 2. Guess what I'm going to have my operator do? He's going to walk over to our wall of steel, pull another piece off, and cut 2 more to make sure you get your 12. I'm not going to be like, oh, hey, this went wrong and you're shit out of luck, or, oh, hey, we'll contact them, and, we're not going to do that. We're going to make sure you get what you want. In the case of larger companies or larger jobs, we have what we call yield jobs. So basically, say you order 800 parts and you say run out the sheets, so it ends up being 852. If they miscut 2, since we quote a combined cost of material and cutting time, so say we only ship 850 out of the 852, you're only getting charged for 850. You're not losing any money. And because you only needed 800 or whatever the number was, you're still well above what you needed. So we call those yield jobs. It's just to help things process through. So usually those are guys who have term deals with us too. So like 30-day terms or payment plans, and they're running at least a few hundred parts a month.
Wow. Okay. Like that's a lot. That's pretty regular. Huh. How many known, I don't know how much this is under contract. How many known, like, I want to say associates, but companies in our industry do you work with? Like, I know you have some on your website. Do you work with like RMJ?
Yeah.
So their work?
We do, yeah. We do all the cutting for RMJ. We work with, who else? TCal Knives, we do a ton of work with. Town Cutler, they're a great cutlery company. Who else? Tactile Knives, we've been doing work with. We'll be cutting for... Actually, I've been talking to Ramon. We've been talking about alloy supply and cutting and surface grinding. There's a new cutlery shop opening up in the Northeast that I'll be supplying that has a bevel grinder coming in. Who else?
There's a bunch. I can't name any of them.
There's a bunch. There's a bunch,
Yeah.
and and the thing is that's one of the things that we cut for Nick.
Name dropping
off
left and
mic.
right.
I'm just like, look at me raising my hand.
Yeah. Who else? I think Hinderer we've been running jobs for. They're great people to work with. A few other shops. A lot of Stroop Knives. Those guys grind a lot of knives. Holy shit, they grind a lot of knives. I actually want to go to his shop to see how he trains his guys to hand grind that many knives, because to me it's impressive, especially in the short amount of time that he's been producing. Who else? We get a bunch, and the thing is now with the surface grinding too, that's just it. It's going to bring more business our way, and I think we'll be on the website. We'll also be introducing. It'll be a weight based. We do a weight based discount. If you call us and you buy, I think right now the first rung is 90 pounds of material, you get like 5% off or something like that, and that goes all the way up to mill direct. So we're going to actually put a portion of that system onto the website. So if you buy X amount of pounds, you'll get an automatic discount. We want people to grow. Usually when you become a regular customer of ours, what we do is we assess that quarterly to see where you're at within our program, and we'll say, hey, now this is your standard discount moving forward. Hey, this is now your standard discount moving forward, so on and so forth. Yeah, what I'm gonna
It's an applied discount.
Yeah, we do apply discount. Well, because we need to, you need to have like a top tier for what, like if I have to take a piece, like if I have to make a itty bitty piece of steel for you, a 1-inch by 12-inch bar from thousands and thousands of pounds, that's going to be, you're paying the most. You're paying the fee to cut it down. You're paying the fee to slit it. All of those things, right? If you wanted, say, 1,000 of those bars, I'm going to give you a weight-based discount, because now I'm just repeating the same job over and over and over again, right? So it becomes easier to do that job. Same thing with we have discounts on machine time. We have sliding scale for everything. I'm actually going to turn that into a tier-based system, so it'll be like prototype, base price, and I think tiers 1 through 6, and then there's mill direct for alloy supply after that, or tiers 1 through 5, something like that. To make it easier on my staff to be able to quote things, and so we have better nomenclature, like, hey, these are tier 1 customers, hey, these are tier 2, so people quickly understand, like, okay, we're in this pricing bracket, oh, this is the size job I should expect, things like that. Because we want we try and treat everyone as equally as possible. You know, like I'm not going to put anyone's job ahead of anyone else's for any particular reason. We don't treat people like that, but what we do need to be able to do is we need to be able to facilitate the flow of product to everyone, from the hobbyists to the part-time makers to the full-time shops. And so figuring out a way to schedule things that kind of keeps that even has been a challenge at best. I think we've got a method now that's going to actually help everyone out a lot. And the other thing, we were talking about industry coming back. So over the past month especially, it's been a weird year. I think we can all admit that. Inflation has beaten the shit out of all of us. A lot of my projections were incorrect, and this is one of the reasons we are now very quickly trying to get all of these other services and things fleshed out, because I was wrong, you know. But I think we were all wrong. We were all kind of riding that wave. So there's overstock happening everywhere. There's inflation. There's a lot of things occurring that are driving price points and driving companies to make different decisions now than they would have last year or the year before, when money was cheaper and free, right? Just turn that money printer on and go burr.
I think that you're right, and I think that absolutely facilitating people is the name of the game. You know, whatever we're doing, however we're part of that journey, supplying the knives, material, it has to work.
It gives them a goal. It gives us margin, you know. It allows us to be able to continue doing this, you know. Who's going to be the next Hinderer? Who's going to be the next RMJ Tactical? Who's going to come in after these guys, you know? I'd like for them to be buying from me from Git. You know, I want them to go through their whole career and know, like, hey man, I'm really secure in the knowledge that my primary company that I work with to make my business go does it the best they can as consistently as possible, you know. And they've taken care of me the same way from the point where I bought this bar until now.
Yeah. No, I think that's a phenomenal way to look at it. It's always, you know, business is a growth scenario, but when you can grow with the person through the entire process, you know, that's exactly it. I mean, you could be facilitating a knife maker who will become that next large corporation or small business or whatever. And either way, best for you to facilitate that by treating everyone equally, but facilitating those who need the product as soon as possible. That's great.
And we're going to try and do that. We another goal of ours for next year is to fill those billable hours. Like I said, prepping water jet work, it takes the same amount of time if you send me a template to get, you know, to draw up your file, get you to agree to it, do your quote and all that, and we run 10 parts for you as if I run 10,000 parts for you. You know, the prep time doesn't change. So to that end of things, because we do a few things that are unique to us, we manually nest everything to get best yield. I have frequently found that we will get, you know, 5, 10, 15% better yield than other companies because we don't use the, hey, AutoNest feature, it puts a rectangle around my part and just slaps it across the sheet. You know, when you're dealing with guys and that like $2,000 for that water jet job is their whole nut for their production for that month or 2 months, you don't want to fuck them over. You know, you want to make sure that you're getting the best yield that you can within reason to make sure you're doing the job right. And, you know, I know that we try and strive to do that as much as possible. And it's important.
The services are amazing. I mean, what you offer is outstanding. And I don't know why, it's just a giant plug. I don't know why I would go anywhere else. But
well, I mean, there's reason. I mean, like, dude, if you live in certain industrialized areas where you've got access to a lot of job shops, guys are looking for work. This a regular scenario when it comes to water jet cutting for us is this: we'll get a call, we'll do a quote, and they'll be like, "Oh, this guy's going to do it for me cheaper," and I'm like, "Cool, man, go for it cheaper." And I won't hear from so and so for like 6 months, and then they'll hit me back and be like, "Hey, that water jet shop that was doing it cheaper, their regular business came back up. Say it's like in Texas, a lot it's the oil fields or this or that, or a contract came up, and they're going to be slammed for the next 8 months." I'm never going to do that. Like, it's not going to happen. If anything, I'm just going to buy another machine. Or right now we're running 6:30 a.m. to 10 o'clock p.m. And for 2 months there, God bless my guys, Oh my God. So we had a really fun thing where we run Omax water jets. And I was on vacation in the middle of the summer, and on the way back I got a phone call from Dale. It was my last day of vacation. He's like, "Hey man, I really didn't want to bother you. You know, we were all." No. This was when I was out in the woods after Blade Show. I think July. He's like, the second position water jet, the cantilever design, it crashed. I'm like, it crashes all the time. He's like, no. The x-axis snapped and it has crashed and tilted down into the bed of the water jet. I was like,
good, right? That's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. So I don't want to go too much into this because we're back up and running now. That's fine. There's still some things to discuss with Omax as the handling of it and all of this. But basically, we were running one water jet for 2 months, and we were running 7 days a week, 16 to 20 hours a day to keep up with production.
Yeah, that's bonkers. That's absolutely.
We actually had to lift the cantilever off the second position water jet, put it on a pallet, and ship it back to their factory so they could repair it correctly. It was nothing that we did. This should never happen. This is 3 times in Omax history this has happened, and we were just lucky enough to be one of the 3, you know? So my crew, couldn't be more proud of them. Those guys showed up at 6 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, stayed until 11 and 12 o'clock at night, came in on weekends, and worked their fucking asses off, to be completely honest. And I don't know if a lot of the makers will ever understand how much effort that took for these guys to put out that work to make sure they got everything on time, or even close to on time. Because, who wants to be here on a Sunday night running a piss-hot machine that's spitting at you and might not be agreeing that day, you know? But they got it done, and we got through, and I am ever so proud of them as a group.
That's something that as an aside, I have a discussion a lot with customers when we talk about custom knives, and people are excited to acquire these items and have them in their collections and or use them, and sometimes these items can be rather expensive, and sometimes they can be rather hard to acquire because they are very popular, etc., etc. And I explain to customers all the time, I'm like, if you only understood the pretense that this item exists in this physical reality, you might appreciate a little more the fact that it's even here, because getting from point A to point B to point C to point D, like, life and the universe were against it from the beginning. The process to manufacture this item are truly something that you'll probably never understand, and that's okay, and it's not necessarily your problem, but you should understand how complicated it is just to get in your hand. It's a incredible process having to do with hundreds of people in some cases just one person, but still, either way, I find it to be equally as hard. If it's just one guy doing it, or if it's 100 guys, the likeliness of that getting finished, it's like I said, the odds are not in anyone's favor.
No, and remember, everything that we're dealing with, like, I explain it to people like this. I don't feel that anything that I do besides produce bar stock is truly production work. And what I mean by this is, in my mind, a production run of any item, we're talking 10,000 to 20,000 of the same exact thing. That's production. It's a whole different mindset, a whole different setup. It's like a whole different world, right? Because you're planning to produce, you have to have the ability, capacity, and skill set to produce the same item 10,000 plus times. Whole different world, right? So anything that, like, almost any of the manufacturers in knife making are doing right now, except for like CRKT or this or that, like those big houses, right? And even like Spyderco, who we've shipped steel to Spyderco, and we've shipped steel to Buck Knives too, actually, for like specialty projects, right? Which is fun. Spyderco is actually the reason that we got the grinder that we have, but that's a whole other story. But yeah, anything like, 200 sounds like a big number. It's really not. That's small batch production. 2,000 is still small batch production. So you are getting what is technically, when you think about a cell phone, right? They make millions of cell phones. They are not unique. Comparatively, a 200-piece batch run of, I don't know, the Kestrel from RMJ is unique, because in reality, those guys will probably only end up making like 15 or 20,000 of them in their lifetime. So 7 billion people versus 10,000 items.
Right.
Lifetime. That's a unique item.
Oh yeah, of course. Especially if you look at, right, exactly like you said, the production numbers of CRKT, forget about it. Like some of those models, or Kershaw, like some of those models are
Or any real production, like for fuck's sake, think about fucking paper clips. Paper clips are,
okay.
It's crazy what it
Yeah,
takes
I
to
don't
make a
wanna
fucking
talk about
paper clip.
clips, but yeah, we.
I know.
Like,
I like making other stuff though.
Sure. Yeah.
Anything that I can produce, make it well, and make a buck on, or help someone do that, I'm into that.
Well, okay. So Pete, thank you so much for coming on and telling us about the Steel Baron and all the awesome stuff you guys do. We hugely appreciate you being a sponsor of the show. Um, and if anybody out there is not familiar after this episode, hit Pete up for that steel and other goodness. He's there to help.
We got a good crew here, so anyone you call and talk to, they're going to be as helpful as they can be.
That's badass, man. All right. Well, hey man, thanks for coming on. I'm gonna do the wrap up. This has been another episode of the Bladeology podcast. Everyone, thank you so much for listening, tuning in. We will catch you
on the next
time.
one.
You almost stuck up on that.
You're staring at me all weird. I'm like, we don't usually do that.
Maybe next time we do this, I'll be up by you guys instead, so I can like directly look at you and see your facial reactions.
Looking at each other, it's horrible.
And
yeah,
no, the worst, right? But then you can see my hand gestures, which really helps when I talk.